Good morning, it's Dan and Lee. It's our Sunday class. It's time for class to begin. Are you in class, Miss Lee?
I am.
Wow, we were both so sleepy today we could barely keep our eyes open.
I always loved that music, that intro music. I remember when we were listening to a lot of different music, and you said, what do you think of this? What's it remind you of? What does this remind you of? And I would sit there and think about this music as I listened to it, and I liked...
How many did we go through?
Oh gosh, I don't know, tons.
Maybe
I don't know.
A few hundred?
Yeah, because we had to get free music so we could use it. And I liked this one.
No, we've actually paid for this music.
Oh, did we pay for this one? Okay.
It was
I liked
cheap.
this one because it sounds strong and fierce and
it's
warriors going
It's
forward.
by Kevin MacLeod, and it's called Clenched Teeth.
Clenched teeth, yeah.
Yeah, it's just,
Determination and
it's
forward.
like the NFL used to
Let's
be.
go. Yeah, they aren't like that anymore.
Now they're clenched arms, and they're against us as Americans. So, yeah, we don't want to talk about
Anyway,
that.
I like the music.
Yeah,
I always like it, and I like it a lot.
Now,
So
there's
where are we
another
going?
one I use sometimes. It's this one.
That's New Orleans music.
That's right. That's blues.
Okay, that's our music appreciation.
That's called
lesson for
Katina
today.
Blues by Kevin MacLeod.
It's called what? Katrina?
No, Cantina.
Oh, Cantina Blues.
Cantina Blues. And I use that for other shows that are not, a big deal. Sometimes I have different shows that I do. But I like that one because it's kind of laid back.
Yeah,
and just have a talk,
yeah, a little
discussion, and it's kind of like...
Breaking news.
What is the breaking news today, Miss Lee?
It's the 1st of October. That's the only thing I can think of that's breaking news.
The days are shorter. That's
They
right.
are getting short. I notice when I wake up, I'm waking up later because the sun shines right in the bedroom, and that usually wakes me up. But I'm waking up later because the sun's not coming up as early.
Isn't it great there's no breaking news? After the hurricane and all the crazy stuff that's gone on.
Actually, our favorite weather forecast and our most trusted weatherman, Paul Delgado on Fox 13, posted yesterday, this is the longest period of time that we've gone, this is the first time after the longest period we had 37.75 days of tropical storms in the Atlantic. And yesterday there were no named tropical storms.
And that's good for us in Florida.
Yeah, so that is really great.
So, yeah, and it's very interesting how that having no news is actually good news.
Yeah. It is funny.
I've been talking to a number of people kind of out on the streets. When I walk around, I talk to people. And everybody's kind of picking up on this idea that the media is hyping us. That they're just wanting us afraid. They start talking about, the news media. And I said, yeah, they want us afraid. Yeah, that's it. They want us afraid. And I said, the reason is because that makes them want to watch them more. And that gives them better viewership. And they're manipulative.
And isn't it interesting, the thing the media wants us to be afraid now of, they want black people and white people to be afraid of each other, Hispanic people and white people and black people to all be afraid of each other. And it's so interesting because our neighborhood, we have black people, white people, Hispanic people, Asian people, we have everybody here.
Yeah.
And everybody, I've not had anybody come just walk up and smack me in the head or anything. They're just nice. They're people. They're human beings. We talk to them. They're our neighbors.
That's where the gospel gives us the power to overcome the fear. And the fear is really the issue. And the devil uses it. And he uses politicians. And he uses media. And he uses salesmen. Because salesmen do it to you too. You come in, well, you better be careful. It'll be gone. You won't get it.
Yeah.
So you get afraid, and then you spend money you shouldn't.
You won't get this price again.
You have not a spirit of fear, but a power of love and sound. We did that last week.
Yeah.
Okay, so this week we're talking about, don't be afraid, don't let them manipulate you. But Jesus said, you're about to go out into a dangerous world.
And that is...
And he just finished praying with them. You know, the upper room discourse.
Is to know what time
now
it
he's
is.
going on. Now is it time? This is very different than most people think the Bible says. Go ahead.
Oh, we're going to start reading?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the verses that we're reading out of are Matthew 26, 30 through 35, Mark 14, 26 through 31, Luke 22, 33 through 39, and John 18. I can't read that. I think it's 1.
Lee can't see very good.
I can't see it.
Let me
It's that
see.
last one. John.
Yeah, it's 1A.
1A. Okay.
Now, the reason there's all these verses here, because we're reading from the life of Christ in stereo. And what he's done is this man took a pair of scissors back in the 60s and 70s, and he cut up the New Testament, and he started organizing it so it flowed as history. So different passages in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John have different accounts of the same event. And that's why this is kind of the whole event put together as a historical thing, not as showing Jesus as the king, not as showing that he's a suffering servant, not to show he's the Son of Man. You know, each one of the books of the New Testament have a purpose. And the purpose of Life Christ Hysterio is to show how the history flows.
That it is all the same story about the same person.
Yeah. And that's why we do this, because so many times people get confused and they just back away from studying the life of Christ. So by studying the life of Christ in stereo, you see it as a narrative of history, a real story, not just a religious book.
I think now we might call it the life of Christ in Dolby sound, because it comes from... It means that sound surrounds you.
That's
so
true.
it's the...
Yeah,
it's
it would
all
be
the
Dolby
gospel.
sound.
Dolby
Yeah,
sound.
yeah.
Okay, so we'll start
But we're
reading
going
now.
to stick with stereo since that's the name of the book.
that's the name of the book. Now, when Jesus had spoken these things, he said
Now, what
to
had he
them-
spoken?
He'd been talking to them about he was getting ready to go. He's preparing them for the future, that, you know, I'm going to be gone, but, you know, I'm going to send someone else to take you, which is the Holy Spirit, take care of you.
Now, when he met these guys, he didn't say, now come with me, I'm going to leave you.
Yeah.
See,
They would
wisdom.
go, yeah, right.
You don't do that. And a lot of times young Christians will do that. You need to repent, you're going to go to hell. See, it's like, you don't need to do that. God loves them, and that's the story they need to know. Now, as they push away, then you might begin to say, you know, this is dangerous, because on the other side of the way you're going is hell. But wisdom is to know what time it is, and Jesus now knows he's only a few days away from dying. And then a few days after that, resurrecting. And a few days after that, going back to heaven and living with the Father, and then building his church.
Okay, so he continues. When I sent you forth without purse or provision bag...
No, not when. Oh, when, yeah, he did when.
When I sent you, it's past tense.
He
already
did do that. When he was training the disciples, he would send them out 2 by 2 into cities, and he said, go talk to them, and if they don't listen, he didn't say, well, just keep preaching, they'll listen. No, he says, if they don't listen, dust your feet and go on. In other words, don't wait around for those that don't respond. And that's what many times we do, particularly as we live in our communities, because as a missionary, I learned very quickly that you can't just hang out with the people who don't want to believe, because pretty soon they're bringing you down. So what you do is you kind of, okay, dust your feet and go find somebody who does want to believe, and then encourage them and work with them, and they encourage you at the same time. And that's, I think, why so many Christians are discouraged, because they aren't going out and finding those who want to believe. They're just hanging out with a lot of churchgoers that really don't believe much about the Bible. They just want to go to heaven. So, and that's good that you want to go to heaven, but that is not the main purpose of being a believer and being born again, because if the main purpose was to make you go to heaven, God would just kill you the minute you received him. But the problem is, he's got to get the message to other people, and you're the method to do it. And if you don't do that, you don't believe. That's what the Bible says anyway.
Okay.
You believe, therefore you speak.
So I'm going to finish this sentence.
I'm going to let you. You're giving me the dirty looks here.
Oh, you cut me off in the middle.
I know.
When I
you.
sent you forth without purse or provision bag or sandals, did you lack anything?
Now, he did this.
And they said,
what?
Nothing.
Nothing. Well, he did this to show them, look, I'll take care of you. As people respond, they'll help you. And we see that. We had a really good friend this week that just noticed that on our Facebook page, our freezer was out. And she called us and donated some money. Or not donated, she gifted us. She just gave us a gift. And it went right into our account. And it's really helping us because it's allowing us to get through the end of this month. And then the first of the next month, we hope to get a new, actually, fridge and freezer together. We're shopping now, and it looks like we're going to be able to do that. So we're working on it, but we appreciate those gifting people that gift us. And if anybody wants to gift us, they can go to our webpage, and there's a link there of how to gift us, and just
It was interesting because this little old freezer we bought real cheap. It was used. It wasn't in great condition, but we used it, and after we used it, we have it sitting outside, and we discovered that although it was really, really cold, all the rain came into it.
It flooded
so it was
in
a
there.
big chunk of thing. And so we hadn't been using it for a while because it was really
We didn't have a room to put it in.
and it was a real mess.
Yeah.
But we thought, okay, the hurricane's coming, we need ice. So we used it for ice. We plugged it back in. It was working. We made bags of ice to keep
We didn't
our
have a
food
generator,
cold.
so we didn't have
Yeah,
electricity.
so we had to make it. We thought, well, this will be our giant ice box.
Yeah.
It got us through the hurricane. I bet it was
Very well.
3 days later
It went
after
out.
the hurricane.
It just went boom.
quit.
It just boomed.
And so, we thank the Lord He kept it working
Yeah.
for as long as we needed it.
What a blessing.
And so now we're needing to look for something new because our refrigerator is like 100
And our
years old,
refrigerator is
too.
getting old, so we're thinking about getting trying to find a used big one. So be praying for us,
side by
folks,
side refrigerator
that we can
freezer.
get what
Yeah.
we need really inexpensively
Yeah.
that'll work.
Yep, that's what we need. Okay, so you think I think about this. He didn't give them a purse, provisions, or even
So he
sandals.
trained them how to do that.
Now sandals,
Well, they
it
had
Ju-
sandals on.
I know, but here's the thing. Most people have closets full of shoes that they move with them from place to place to place. Now I have probably more shoes than because I've got some old shoes that actually aren't comfortable
Well,
anymore.
now that we've
But-
been moving for years, you don't have nearly as many as you used to.
No, but the thing is, they went out with only the sandals on their feet.
On their feet. That's
And
right.
they didn't have taxis, Uber,
They walked.
buses. They walked. So
Yeah.
shoes, sandals were so important.
You don't need extra tires. That was their
Yeah.
spare tires. Like missionaries go out, they load up the spare tires
Yeah.
on the cars. The thing is, Jesus trained them. Look, I'll care for you. That's point one. But he says, it's kind of like Israel. When God brought Israel out of Egypt, what did he do at first?
When he brought them out of Egypt,
They're in the wilderness. How
he
did they
provided manna,
There's 1 million people.
which I guess is, I don't even know exactly what
They
manna
had
is.
manna
What
is
is
just
manna?
stuff they picked up every day. It came out of the sky.
I always think of it like saltine crackers.
Yeah, it's kind of like
That's what
saltine
think
crackers.
of
I
it.
think it's like matzah bread. Anyway, it's manna is it was food.
But it fulfilled all their nutritional
Nutrition.
needs.
But also they complained about that, so God gave them quail.
Yeah,
God also gave them water. They're in the wilderness.
I know.
So he supplied their needs, okay? But then there's a change. They cross the Jordan. They spent 40 years out there wilderness. God supplied manna, quail, so they had meat, and they had all these
Bread
things,
or whatever it was.
this manna. And then suddenly they crossed the Jordan to go in to take the land. Now, in the battle of taking the land, he quit supplying the food. Now they got to fight. They would take up swords.
And find their food.
And they got to find their food. So wisdom is to know what time it is. If they say, well, God, where's the manna? Okay. He just said, well, I told you, you got to grow your own. You got to take care of yourself. That's what he's doing here. He's making a transition here between when he's training them and teaching them, I supply your needs. Don't worry about tomorrow. He has enough problems of his own. Just go make disciples. Okay? Then he goes to this. Very critical.
Okay. But now, let him who has a purse take it.
Okay, now
and
you take a
likewise
purse.
a provision bag.
You have provisions.
And let him who has no sword sell his cloak and buy one.
Whoa.
Sell your coat to buy a sword.
Now he's telling them to even have a sword. Now this is so anti-pacifism. It's amazing. But is he saying now go kill people?
Well, not yet.
We actually find Peter being rebuked because when they came to arrest Jesus, Peter took out that sword, or one of the disciples took out the sword. Was it Peter or one of the disciples? I don't remember. But he took out that sword and cut the ear off of one of the servants of the high priest and just rebuked him. No, that's not what we've got the sword for, but it's a defensive thing.
Okay, well, let's go over what he tells them to take so that we're
Okay.
sure about this. A purse. You have a purse, take it.
He told them before, don't take a purse.
Now, a purse is not like a Gucci bag.
Yeah.
A purse meant your money. It was your wallet.
Your
you
wallet.
carried your gold in a bag you tied around your waist or
And
your
before
neck.
he told them not to worry about
Yeah.
that. So why is it? See, some missionary Christians say, "Well, we don't have to worry about money." Yeah, you do. You got to figure out and find a way to supply the everyday needs of yourself and those you're responsible for, usually your family. So you need a purse. You need a way to have money coming in, and that's why missionaries raise support. Or there's tent maker missionaries, which. They work at making tents. Paul did that too. And he had people give them money. And that's why what we do now, we were faith missionaries for, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
And the Lord supplied our needs. There were times it was scary. There were times it was a blessing. There was times of abundance and there were times of not much. But he did supply our needs. We didn't starve. But at this time, we're able to draw Social Security. So they're our major supporter. Just, it's about as much as I got as a missionary. And then we have a few extra needs. And that's where our friends saw a picture that our thing went out. And they sent us a gift. That really helps because Social Security is very little.
Yeah.
Because the missionary didn't pay much into Social Security, so we don't get much out. So.
And I pretty much, and you had a couple jobs in the out in
well,
the world.
I paid in.
So
but you
paid,
didn't.
But I didn't have much.
You didn't have
job.
enough jobs out in the world. You did a little bit, but not enough.
Yeah.
So we just get Social Security really for one person.
And so then also a provision bag, and that would be your clothing, maybe your food that you
Your
take
suitcase.
with you. Your
That's
suitcase.
your suitcase.
Yeah, your suitcase.
Not your purse or your wallet.
Yeah.
It's your suitcase. So now you've got to make sure you got enough clothes. You got to have shoes.
Little money.
You might need
True.
a sleeping bag. Whatever is necessary, a tent.
Yeah.
Whatever's necessary for this journey. Okay? Because there's different journeys and wisdoms to know what time it is. But no longer is it time to not worry about that, because that was a temporary ministry. It was I'm going to go out into this little area, and there's going to be people there that let you live in their house for short periods. But you're not staying there for long periods. And you're now going out for the rest of your life. And that's what a missionary does. He's out there for the rest of his life. And so many times, people think being a faith missionary is really easy. I've got a few friends that, they wanted to be, and they just can't seem to get through it. And it's very difficult, because you're really working two jobs. You're working the job as ministry outreach, and you're working really sometimes three. You're working the job of fundraising, but then sometimes you're working the job as tent maker to make enough in between.
Yeah.
So really it's like having three jobs all at the same time. So most people don't have that in them. Being a faith missionary is very difficult. It seems easy because, you just get money sent to you. No, it doesn't work that way.
It's very hard.
It's very difficult. And we so appreciate those over the years, and at this time still, that send us gifts.
Okay, and then here's an interesting thing, and you wonder why he said this. Let him who has no sword sell his cloak and buy one.
Whoa, he just took and put an emphasis from looking good. You don't worry about the suit you're wearing. Worry about your firearm. Worry about your defensive See, a sword, and particularly a Roman sword, was a defensive sword. It was short. And a short, most of the swords there, they weren't these big Arab swords, these great big round ones.
Yeah.
They weren't spears. A spear is an offensive weapon, but it's a defensive weapon. Now, Peter misused it as an offensive weapon, and he was rebuked.
Yep.
But the Bible gives here is where it clearly shows that Jesus gives the right of self-defense. Now, that's a very different kind of thing than murder. Say somebody comes to you and they're trying to, like for instance, we had not long ago, a few weeks ago, somebody broke into our house in the middle of the night. He's just standing in our living room. And Lee and I go, "What are you doing here?" And we couldn't believe it. And we're in the house. And finally I said, "Well, you go back outside. I'm going to get my clothes on and I'm going to come out and talk to you." So I did. I came out and talked to him. Now, I was happy I didn't have a gun at that moment. And because that was so startling, I could have shot the guy. Probably wouldn't have. I think I have pretty good self-control, and I don't
the
get
other
afraid.
thing that was weird about this situation is he had turned our outside lights on. We have outside lights, just little lights that are always on. So it made it really, really dark in here.
He turned them off.
Yeah, he unplugged them.
Yeah, that's
Did
what
I say
mean.
On?
Yeah, you
he
said
turned
on.
the lights off.
So it
He
was really
unplugged them,
dark.
So we couldn't see anything. Usually there's like
It's
a
kind of
little
like
bit
our
of
night
light,
lights
yeah.
around our yard. We
And-
have these kind of Christmas twinkle lights that hang around, and they kind of light our yard just a little bit.
And if the door had been open and those lights were on, it would have been light.
We
in
could
here.
have seen. It was
but
dark.
he had unplugged them,
Yeah.
and so it was real dark in here.
So it was kind of a spooky situation. We called the cops and tried to keep him here. I couldn't grab him, but finally he spooked and ran away. And what he was fleeing from a gang. And he'd been beaten up pretty bad. He showed me his blood on his face and pretty much beat up and bruises. And the police came and they talked about, he sounds like the victim we're looking for. I don't know what happened to him, and I don't know what ended up happening. But it was a good example. At that time, he was on my property. And here in Florida, we have stand your ground law. And that means if he's in my ground, I have the right to shoot him, especially if he's inside my house.
Yeah, if you feel your life
And
is in danger.
I never felt my life was in danger with the guy, because I instantly asked him, "What are you doing here?" That was so funny. What are you doing here? He was just in the wrong spot. And so anyway,
And we have a barking dog too, so
and
he didn't know what that
he
was.
pretty quickly realized he probably should. He said, "Well, he thought we were another place," and he went out.
He actually was going to break into a different place.
He was
That's
he
another
actually was
story.
about to break into somebody else's house, but it was an interesting thing. But here, if the guy would have become aggressive, to say try to rape Lee or try to murder me, I would have had the right to shoot the guy. I would have tried not to kill him, but you stop him. You have to do what you got to do. And that's what Jesus is talking about here. You have the right to self-defense.
Yep.
Not offense, defense. And this is the whole basis of defensive wars, too. This thinking goes all the way out into civil government. Now, civil government has the right to the sword, to execute people, the Bible says. In Romans 13, in Genesis chapter 9, it talks about that. But what we have with them is countries don't have the right under God's system to be oppressive and take over and aggressive. And that's where we in America, we probably made some mistakes with that. But we also have defended others that have asked for help. So it's a little vague and a little fuzzy and hard to work with. But you have the right of a defensive war. That is a just war. It's called a just war theory. And that's where the Bible teaches that it is just to fight an enemy that is attacking you. And that brings us to the NFL.
Oh, got it in
You
there,
didn't know
you?
we were going to go there, did you?
No.
You didn't think I'd get there.
No.
Miss Lisa, you going to talk about the NFL today? I said, probably not, but I am. Because the NFL has been led by a communist leader.
Which, in case there's the rare person who doesn't know
what's
means,
going on.
It's the National Football League.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
American football.
If this
That's
is
what
played
it is.
years from now, just to bring you up to date, this Kaepernick, is that his name?
Kaepernick?
Kaepernick, and San Francisco player decided to disrespect
This was last
the American
year.
flag because he says America is a racist country that oppresses black people. It's just total lie. But he's a communist. Okay, that's what he is. He wears a Che Guevara t-shirt. He praises Fidel Castro. He likes tyrants. He's against freedom. Well, that then spread because these people...
Something else I found interesting this week is he's never registered to vote.
Never vote. He doesn't believe in America. He doesn't want to working with people.
No.
He's just an anarchist communist.
Yeah.
Well, he was able to spread his lie kind of to a few other black guys in the NFL, and then the union got involved and brought in all the players because Donald Trump said, well, he's a bad guy, and he called him an SOB,
Yeah.
and he is an SOB because he's not a son of America. That's what is he's untimely born. But the thing is, we have a situation where a lot of people got manipulated. Now, the thing is, they didn't attack us to kill us, so we don't pull out guns and shoot them.
Right.
That's not what you do. They're not trying to kill us right now. They would. An anarchist, if there comes a time, and that's where Black Lives Matter are doing that. See, actually, this Kaepernick guy is a Black Lives Matter supporter and also an Antifa supporter, which are two organizations that are taking clubs and beating up people and rioting, okay? Well, in those cases, if I was in the street and I was carrying a gun or I had a club or I have the right to defend myself as a Christian. I don't have to let them beat me up. But it's probably wise just not to even be in that situation. But what happened, the NFL started getting drawn into this. And
I would say emotionally, not because they think what he's doing is right.
I think emotionally because of guilt. See,
yeah.
what these communists do, they use white guilt. It's something that Dr. Steele from UCLA has written about. He's a black guy that's written about how these radical blacks use guilt on Americans. Say you're guilty because you had slavery. Well, it's like we invented it. We didn't invent slavery. Slavery's been around for thousands of years. Actually, it's the white Americans that got rid of it. And it's 350,000 white Republicans that died to get rid of it.
War, yeah.
So what these guys are doing is slandering the whole of these people that died for their freedom, for black people's freedom. And I am very much for black people's freedom. Equality, not superiority. And that's what these people want. This is black liberation theology, which is just as Nazi as white liberation theology. They're both bad. So in that case, Jesus said, you may come in situations where you need a sword to protect yourself. And in our day, I want to put this in because I think it's important. One of the things that has brought out freedom, most people don't realize this, and you see this, I play some video games, and they got these video games that really illustrate this. I'm thinking about taking a video of this to use it, but they have these gladiators, and see, back in the Middle Ages and before the firearm, before there was a handgun, even cannons didn't do it. But the handgun so changed the world because up until that time, a person would train and train and train as a gladiator and a soldier and a Viking and a barbarian to go and raid and kill and steal, okay? And the peasants, who were basically farmers and herdsmen and merchants, they just worked real hard every day. They didn't have time to train. Mm-hmm. And the best thing they had was a little sword. They didn't spend a lot of money on that.
You often hear about
pitchfork. Oh, that's good. A pitchfork or a shovel.
Yeah.
You know, that's about the best weapon they had.
Yeah.
And maybe a club of some kind, a hoe. But they weren't trained in battle. And so all through Europe, you had these vandals. They were actually called vandals. And other groups that would just move around and raid and steal. And that went on for quite a long time, a couple of centuries. And people began to build houses up on tops of mountains to keep away from these people. And in Italy, you find a lot of beautiful castles up on the mountains, in Germany too. But what's so interesting, the invention of the handgun made it so now a farmer could have a weapon that he could use to get food. Okay, so it wasn't a weapon at all. It was a tool of production, because it allowed him to have food, meat for the table. But then if he trained well, he could defend himself. And if these vandals came in, he was much more powerful than they were with a sword. And I think the perfect example of this is Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
If you remember that scene,
I
can
do.
you describe it?
He was in a market someplace in the Middle East.
Who was he?
Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones.
Running away from these people, and there was this big
These Arabs were after him.
big Arab with a
Muslims.
turban, and he had one of those. I think they're called. What are they called?
Big swords.
Big sword. Those big.
They were
swords.
actually, they have a name called the Assassins. It's like we call them radical Islam today. There's always been this group.
Yeah.
They were the Assassins. They were there to assassinate the infidel, anybody who disrespected the Quran or Muhammad. They were to kill them. That has always been true in Islam.
Okay, so this Arab warrior was running
Great
around,
big guy.
killing. And yeah, not only was he had this big sword, he was a big guy, killing people left
Yeah.
and right,
Yeah.
and chasing Indiana Jones and all
Yeah.
these people, and they come face to face, and the guy
And
lifts up.
there's a big crowd.
Big
Everybody's
crowd
watching.
Yeah. See who's gonna win.
It's like
And he lifts up this big, huge sword.
they're about 10
and
feet
he
apart.
starts to strike, and Indiana Jones just reaches in his pocket, pulls out a pistol, and shoots him.
That
Boom.
is what the handgun did.
He was like David and Goliath.
It equalized.
Boom, he's dead.
Well, it equalized the barbarian and the civilized, and that's why the Second Amendment is so important. It equalizes the barbarians and the civilized, and it equalized the civilized from the tyrants. Because in American Revolution, there were enough people that had handguns, and they were muskets, but they were a little bigger than a pistol, and they were able to hide behind trees and move quickly, and they were able to equalize this mighty British Empire. So it has brought about liberty. Now, if you use it aggressively to murder, that's different, and that's forbidden. Thou shalt not murder. But killing is not forbidden in the New Testament. Defensive killing is not murder. Okay.
For I tell you that this that has been written must yet be fulfilled in me. And he was numbered with transgressors. For the things concerning me also have a consummation. And they said, Behold, Lord, here are 2 swords. And he said to them, It is enough.
Well, here's what's interesting. He's emphasizing there's coming a time where I'm going to die and be with the evil people. I'm going to hell. That's what he's doing. And he did. He died and went to hell and preached. And then he resurrected, and he brought some of the people that were in Hades, which was divided between those of the bosom of Abraham and those that weren't, and they brought them to heaven. But what's interesting is Jesus here is emphasizing the eternal things, the hidden kingdom, and they hear, oh, sword, okay, we got 2. See, they became reactionaries.
Well, I think also this shows that they're understanding some of what he's saying, but not everything.
That's
and
right.
they heard him say, sell your cloak, get a sword.
Yeah.
And so they want him to be protected.
Yeah.
So they're giving
That's
him
true.
2 swords.
That's true.
They don't,
We got lots of swords.
Here,
we
got
got
2
atomic
swords
bombs.
already.
But see, that's what we tend to do in our theology, in our reactions to people. People diss us, we can overreact real quickly. Huh?
That's the end of what we were
I know it
gonna
is.
say. Okay.
And the idea is that we got to be careful about developing a reaction theology. Because when you react to something, you tend to go past it over to something that wasn't said. Jesus didn't say get 2 swords.
He said, if you don't have one, sell your coat and buy one.
Have one for you.
Yeah.
It wasn't so you have 2 and or 5 or 10, and you need an army. No, self-defense. See, that's why the one sword is such an important thing. And in our day, it's really a gun, the handgun. And we don't need. But see, what people will tend to do, and this is happening today, where they get a handgun, then they get a rifle, then they get more, then they got to get safes, and then they've got to get whole rooms full of weapons.
Exactly what I was
and that's overreaction. That's hoarding. No, God protects us. He hasn't done away with this. You can go out. I'll care for you. But in very crazy situations, you need to be able to defend yourself.
So this is a difference in having wisdom to know what the difference is between being prepared or being... You don't have to be prepared for a year in advance. You're prepared for now.
We're going to do something on this sometime, because Lee and I were talking this morning, and we're out of time today. We're over, actually. This thing of time. Because I find most stress is brought on by misapplying time. People live in the past, people live in the future, instead of living the way Jesus said, don't worry about tomorrow, it has enough problems of its own. Paul said, forgetting what's behind. So there's a worldview within Christianity, a philosophy of time, that is very important to live a full and abundant life. But we're really out of time, and we're way over, talking too much. So we will see you next week at, what is this show?
Our Sunday class.
Oh, that's right. It's our Sunday class. And we invite you to go to our sundayclass.simplesite.com and learn more about Lee and I. Or you can go to theroddenreporter.com and get our different things. And we're going to be shifting that theroddenreporter.com to our Facebook page. I'm sorry, not Facebook page. To our blog real soon, which is Rodden Reporter and our Sunday class. Yeah, we almost lost our audience. And our class almost wasn't over.